UFC Fight Night Vegas 37, Smith vs. Spann, takes place this weekend, and I'm going to go through the entire card, starting with the early prelims, ending with the main event, giving my prediction and breakdown for every single fight on the card, starting with the early prelim opener of Emily Whitmire vs. Hannah Goldy. Real high-level stuff kicking off the card this weekend. Can't wait for this one after 2 weeks off. Really going to kick off with a bang. Emily Whitmire 4-4, Hannah Goldy 5-2. Both girls coming off losses, so I'm going to judge them based on their last performances. And Emily Whitmire just looks like she's struggling with the fundamental basics of MMA, whereas Hannah Goldy seems like she just got a little bit outdone by another opponent who landed some decent shots on her, losing to Diana Belbita. Emily Whitmire's coming off a loss to Polyana Viana. I kind of consider those two women around a similar level of skill, and I feel like Hannah Goldy actually showed that she's game, she's tough, she goes after it when she needs to. Emily Whitmire just kind of doesn't look good in many ways. She got immediately armbarred by Polyana Viana. Before that, she got choked out by Amanda Ribas, but that's Amanda Ribas, so it's not really a bad loss, but she doesn't really have any good wins. Her best win is Stitch Albu, who is literally just an OnlyFans fighter that we found out wasn't good in any way whatsoever. So I'm going to be going with Hannah Goldy here. She, I believe, is on roids, and I'm not going to make that statement loosely. I'm going to really heavily assume that Hannah Goldy might not be completely natural. She's built like a mini fridge. I'm going to go with Hannah Goldy here. I like her work in the clinch. I think she's somewhat decent at range technically compared to Emily Whitmire. And she's weirdly strong in the grappling situations, and even ended her last fight that she lost against Diana Belbita, getting on top of her in full mount and landing some big shots until the final bell. And who knows, if there was an extra minute in that last round, she might have found herself the finish. So I'm going to go with Hannah Goldy. Better last performance, more active as well. I think she gets this one done. I like that she immediately turned around after her last fight and said, no, I'm not having a loss. I'm getting a win in this next one. I'll go with Hannah Goldy by unanimous decision over Emily Whitmire this weekend. Moving on up the card, Gustavo Lopez takes on Heili Alateng in the bantamweight division. Gustavo Lopez just hasn't shown me anything good at all, and Heili Alateng has kind of just shown off his ability as a heavy bag, but he does have a really good win that aged very well over Dana Batgarel, which is a really good win for Heili Alateng to have, and he has been taking on some tough opponents, and I know his record looks really bad, but you have to understand, this guy started his career, in his first 9 fights, he was 4-5. In his first 10 fights, he was 4-6. So I know his record doesn't look good in the same way that Gustavo Lopez's record doesn't look too good, but recently, he's kind of been doing okay. So he went from 4-6 after 10 fights to 14-8. That's 10-2 in his last 12. I don't mind that streak, okay? So he definitely has shown some signs of improvement. He's the younger guy here compared to Gustavo Lopez as well, so I'm going to count on more of that improvement. I know he got whooped up by Casey Kenny in his last bout, but Kenny made a close fight with Dominic Cruz. I know he lost to Song Yudong recently, but Kenny's one of those guys who he genuinely is 15 to 25 level in the bantamweight division. He's that guy just outside the rankings, not quite good enough to beat the ranked guys, but good enough to beat everyone else in the division, including Heili Alateng. I just feel like Gustavo Lopez might not even be good enough to beat the real entry-level guys. He has a win over Anthony Burkak, who is just not good and completely old and completely out of it. He got a rear naked choke in the first round. I don't see him out-grappling Heili Alateng here, and on the feet against Adrian Yanez, he just looked a bit lost, in all honesty. It wasn't really a situation where, I mean, don't get me wrong, Adrian Yanez is really good, but we just saw Randy Costa go out there and really pepper up Adrian Yanez in that first round and show that Adrian Yanez, although magical out there, is not completely untouchable and on another level to a lot of opponents. Like, he's still a fighter who can be really badly hurt in certain moments, like against Randy Costa. So to see him just completely cruise control through Gustavo Lopez, and Lopez just looked completely lost out there. I think that Yanez and Heili Alateng would get maybe into a bit of a back and forth scrap before eventually Yanez would maybe beat him. But I'm going to go with Heili Alateng here. He's been better recently. He has a win over Ryan Benoit. He has a win over Dana Batgarel. He doesn't have many great wins in general, but I don't mind that one over Dana Batgarel. I think that's a pretty good win to have, especially compared to Gustavo Lopez's win over Anthony Burkak. What do I do with that? I'm going to go with Heili Alateng. I think I trust him to get a decision win, 29-28 over Gustavo Lopez. Also, Heili Alateng showed in his last fight, he's still got a granite chin, if anything, and took good shots. He lost to Kai Asakura in his career. That's one of his only 2 losses out of his last 12 fights. Kai Asakura, who, if you don't know, is a legend. Not a legend, sorry. He's a really, really good guy that no one's really heard of. He's been fighting guys like Kyogi Horiguchi. He also is fighting guys like Manel Cap as well over in Ryzen. He's really good on the Eastern Hemisphere of the world. So I respect that loss, even though he did lose in the first round. And other than that, he's only lost to Casey Kenny. I'm going with Heili Alateng here over Gustavo Lopez by decision. Moving on up the card. Impa Kasanganay versus Carlston Harris. Man. I'm going to go Impa Kasanganay here. But Carlston Harris is pretty good. I just feel like Impa Kasanganay is so technically sound. I don't see him being out-grappled by Carlston Harris. I don't think Harris is going to be able to do too much on the ground to him. Impa Kasanganay, he's just one of those prospects, and it really hurts me that he got spinning back kicked in the face by Joaquin Buckley, because he's so much better than Joaquin Buckley, dude. He was literally taking over that fight in the second round, and I think he would have gone on to win as the rounds went on. I just think he gets this one done. He's very fundamentally sound. He knows what to do when he gets taken down. He just works. It's like a system to him. And when you see fighters have that kind of composure out there, I think you've got to kind of bet on it. Carlston Harris is a little bit more wild. He beat Christian Aguilera in his last bout. I predicted him to win that one by submission as well, and he got it done by submission. But it's Christian Aguilera. I think Impa Kasanganay would really easily beat him. Really easily beat him. They're both big guys for the welterweight division. I'm going to go Impa Kasanganay here. I liked his performance against Sasha Paletnikov, pounced on a rear naked choke. Looked good before then as well. And he's just very composed, very, very calm, very with it the entire time. He's also a lot younger than Carlston Harris. Trains at a better gym, in my opinion, as well. Carlston Harris is going to have his one moment here where he's going to say, listen, I'm going to give it my all right now. This is as far as I'm going to go. 34 years of age. He's probably going to be training as hard as he's ever trained before. But he just... Other than his last win against Sagid Kamayev, who was having some pretty close fights with some okay guys. So you were kind of telling beforehand that that guy with the last name that ends with a V, who's Dagestani, wasn't maybe at the level of those other Dagestani prospects coming up, even though he was 17-1. He had some risky majority decisions to certain guys in his career. I'm going to go with Impa Kasanganay in a very close 29-28 unanimous decision. But I do think it will have some close rounds. I'll say he'll get it done in the later 2 rounds, compared to Carlston Harris maybe getting some good takedowns in the first and landing a couple of good shots that make him win that round visually for the judges. We'll say 29-28 Impa Kasanganay. I think he's more composed as this fight goes on. Moving on up the card, Erin Blanchfield versus Sarah Alpar. I'm going to go with Erin Blanchfield. I'm going to pick her by submission. Very good jiu-jitsu specialist, Erin Blanchfield. I'm picking her to win. She's fought some good opponents. She was like the first person in Eddie Bravo's Jiu-Jitsu Invitational that won it or something like that in the female side of things, I guess. Pretty good Jiu-Jitsu in her career so far, and she's taken on good competition opponents early on in her career. Had an amateur bout against a bit of a can who was basically paid to lose, let's be real. Then took on a couple of cans in her pro career, had some risky ones, but then she beat Kay Hansen, 3-1 girl at the time, by majority decision. And that's a good opponent to get so early on. She's now in the UFC strawweight division. She went on and lost to Tracy Cortez by split decision. It was more of like a do you mark the control time over the damage type situation with a split decision. Then she beat a 2-0 opponent, a 6-1 Victoria Leonardo by head kick in the second round, by the way. That's what Manon Fiorot did to Victoria Leonardo. So, like... It's like there's some similarities there, right? Like, she's a jiu-jitsu expert, but she's head-kicking a girl in a similar fashion to what this massive hyped-up prospect in Manon Fiorot's doing to women. So, and also she beat 6-1 Brogan Walker-Sanchez in a good performance. She got a performance of the night bonus for it as well. So, I'm definitely going to be going with Erin Blanchfield here, getting the win by unanimous decision. Submission. I'll say submission win. I think Sarah Alpar is just not really showing up in professional shape. I think Erin Blanchfield is more of an athlete than her, and I think she'll win the exchanges on the ground, and I think she'll lock up like a rear naked choke in the third round after Alpar's just sick of being on bottom trying to sweep and defend herself. I think she'll eventually give in a bad position, and then I think that she's going to get submitted in the third round by Erin Blanchfield. I'll go third round rear naked choke for Erin Blanchfield. Moving on up the card, Montel Jackson versus JP Bays. Montel Jackson. Why is that red mark there? I haven't been hit by anything. Or have I? Who knows? When the old women fight back, you know? Either way. What was I going to talk about just now? Montel Jackson, JP Bays. I got distracted by elderly abuse. Those must be from Holyfield versus Vitor Belfort. Either way, still in my mind. Montel Jackson, JP Buys. I'm going to go with Montel Jackson completely annihilating him in the first round. JP Buys' management team and his wife should be ashamed of themselves letting him take this fight. This is the dumbest fight you could ever take. Montel Jackson is way bigger than him. He's got great grappling. He showed that against Brett Johns, who I think is one of the better grapplers at bantamweight. Like, I know he didn't really make it into the rankings of the bantamweight division, but the guy's grappling was actually really, really good for it. Like, coming out of Wales at the time, all the way back then. I think that his grappling's really good, and Montel Jackson kind of shut it down a bit, even though I think he lost that fight in the moments because he lost a grappling position. He kind of like stopped any progression of guard, so I don't see JP Buys just taking him down and getting his back from as a flyweight compared to a real bantamweight like Brett Johns not really being able to get into any good positions on him. It was more just like Brett Johns stalled out Montel Jackson against a cage in that fight, got dropped in that fight as well, and Montel Jackson does have that power, and I think he's going to go out there and use that power. He almost KO'd Felipe Colares, but like battered him about 3 different times in that fight, and showed great cardio as well, which is good to see because he emptied the gas tank looking for a finish on Felipe Colares about 3 different times, and Felipe stayed in there. Credit to him, he's got a tough chin, so Montel showed that he has a gas tank, he can go for 3 rounds. He was trying to finish it in the third. I don't see any way JP Buys wins this one. I think he has an attempt at a takedown in the first round that might work, that Montel's going to get him his way out of, and then maybe he holds Montel against the cage for a bit. Coming off a KO loss to Bruno Silva, you're going to get sparked out cold by Montel Jackson. Massive reach advantage. Hand size of a heavyweight, if you haven't seen Montel Jackson's hands. Montel Jackson first round KO. Stupidest decision of anyone's career ever. JP Buys about to get sacrificed. Moving on up the card, Dakota Bush versus Rong Zhu. Interesting. I'm going to go with Rong Zhu here. Dakota Bush is kind of like they're offering up a, hey, Chinese guy that we want to win. Here's a win. Like, hey, Zhang Wei Li, here's another title shot. You know what I mean? Like, it's one of them situations. Dakota Bush is okay. He's not bad, but he's also 8-3. And he's not good in any way, really, whatsoever. Lost to Austin Hubbard, which is kind of like that decision where are you the Vince Pichels of the lightweight division, or are you a little bit worse? Rong Zhu didn't have a great performance in his debut either. He looked very, very gun-shy against Rodrigo Vargas, but Rodrigo Vargas ain't a bad fighter himself. He lost to Alex De Silva. He lost to a 6-0 guy by split decision formerly in his career, but other than that, he's beaten pretty much everyone else other than Jose Caceres, who has a fucking win over Kamaru Usman. So, I like Rodrigo Vargas. Rong Zhu had a bit of a lackluster performance where he didn't really pull the trigger enough, and maybe that was because it was his UFC debut. He's a young guy. This is what he's dreamed on forever. He's 21 years of age still, so he's got so much time to improve. Man, how active was he? I guess he's been fighting since he was underage, because Jesus, he is active. Fair play to him, man, because he's 21. He's probably going to be beating these other guys who are like 28 in terms of contract payments. So I'm going to go with Rong Zhu here. I think he's going to definitely improve, being a younger guy, and I think he'll definitely get a good win over Dakota Bush, who I just don't think is that good whatsoever, but still a young guy, but just doesn't really have any notable wins whatsoever in his entire fucking career, other than maybe Jose Martinez. But I'm going to go with Rong Zhu. More experience. He's actually fought some decent competition as well. 17-5 guy in his career. 18-5 guy in his career. I'm picking him to win. He's lost to some guys that we know the names of. I'm definitely going to go with Rong Zhu here, and I think he'll get a TKO win over Dakota Bush. Moving on up the card, Nate Maness versus Tony Gravely. I'm going to go with Nate Maness over Tony Gravely. I like Nate Maness. I've been watching out for him for a while. I really like Tony Gravely as well. The winner of this bout is going to be in a real... It's either time for that fight that's going to get them ranked, or it's time for a ranked opponent themselves. Like Nate Maness 13-1, Tony Gravely 21-6. But man, let's talk about Tony Gravely for a second. Maybe one of the least padded records. Look at the guy that he's lost to in his career. Brett Johns by rear naked choke in the third round, and he took that fight on short notice in his debut after his appearance on the Contender Series as well. He's beaten Draco Rodriguez, he's beaten Chris Matinho, he's beaten Ray Rodriguez, he's beaten Geraldo de Freitas Jr. I don't see it going well. He's lost to Patricky Mix, or Patchy Mix. Not bad. Really not bad of a loss whatsoever. He lost to Manny Bermudez, who was 8-0 at the time. Marab de Velashvili, Ricky Bandejas, Pat Sabatini. All of these guys are in major promotions right now. Of course, Ricky Bandejas at Bellator, Merab in the top 10 of the UFC, Pat Sabatini making his way to the top 10 of the lightweight division, I believe, or the featherweight division, should I say, the featherweight division. These are all names that we know. Like, Tony Gravely's been thrown himself to the wolves his entire career. I like that attitude, but I'm going to go with Nate Maness. His grappling is really good, and he's grappled with guys up weight divisions. And that Geraldo de Freitas Jr. fight was a little bit suspect for me with Tony Gravely. He wasn't getting some good positions in the scrambles that he usually would get against other opponents outside the UFC, like Ray Rodriguez, like Darren Mima, who was 10-7, like Chris Matinho. I think that Nate Maness is that one bit better than Geraldo de Freitas. And Tony Gravely's good, and he's young, and he does have time to improve, but so is Nate Maness. And I know he lost that fight to Johnny Munoz, but got it a win because he got hit in the groin. But at the same time, he's fighting through fucking groin shots. So it's also a little bit of a win for him. Like, how would he have done if he didn't get fucking kicked in the groin 3 fucking times in a fight? You don't know. So I'm going to go with Tony Gravely. I like his grappling, and because of his great grappling, I think that's what I'm going to give it to him for. I think they're both going to even each other out on the feet. Tony Gravely, a lot of his finishes come in the later rounds in 4 and 5. He's not going to have them here. I'm going to go with Nate Maness being a better grappler than him, and being a better grappler than Geraldo de Freitas, who gave him a lot of trouble in the grappling exchanges, and I think he's going to win it based on damage and positional control. 29-28, Nate Maness over Tony Gravely, and you're giving me him as an underdog? That's a good underdog right there. Nate Maness gets it done over Tony Gravely by unanimous decision. Moving on up the card to another good fight, Pannie Kianzad versus Raquel Pennington on the prelims. I'm going to go with Pannie Kianzad here. Raquel Pennington's good, but I like Pannie Kianzad. I've been picking her a bunch of her fights recently, and I do think she's going to get the win here over Pennington. Pennington just coming to the end of her career. Pannie Kianzad's been looking pretty good recently. I know some people had a problem with her last fight. I have no idea how they didn't score that last fight for her whatsoever. She definitely beat Alexis Davis. And Alexis Davis showed in her fight before that she can still come back and win. It was a good win by Pannie Kianzad. She beat Ciara Eubanks before that. She beat Betch Cahill before that. She beat Jessica Rose Clark before that. She's got good wins. I'm definitely going to be going with Pannie Kianzad. I think she's really seasoned herself. She's got good fundamentals in the grappling. I don't see her being taken down. And she's really good in the dirty boxing range, in the clinch, in those moments. She showed that against Alexis Davis. Like, she's really good in tight with those very tight technical hooks, good uppercuts as well. And I think she's going to get the better of Raquel Pennington, because I don't know what Raquel Pennington's doing it for anymore. She does have some decent wins recently, but she hasn't been too active. Last fight was Marion Renault. She's 9-5. She's completely old and out of it. She just held her against a cage and kneed her to the body a couple of times around, and she won the fight based off of it. I'm definitely going to be going with Pannie Kianzad here. I think she's too young and vigorous to just let herself be held against a cage. But this is an upset pick that could happen, so I don't mind an underdog of Raquel Pennington, but I'm going to trust Pannie Kianzad to go out there and get it done by unanimous decision. 30-27 over Raquel Pennington. I think Pennington's probably done here. This might be the end of the road. Moving on to the headliner of the prelims. Tafon Nchukwi versus Mike Rodriguez. I'm picking Mike Rodriguez. I think he's going to give Tafon Nchukwi a lot of problems. I noticed that Tafon Nchukwi couldn't really find his way on the inside of Park Yun-yong at middleweight as well. This is back up at light heavyweight now. I don't like the yo-yoing. Pick a division. Stay there. You've moved all the way down to middleweight. You changed your entire lifestyle to slim down into middleweight shape. And then you give up on the first loss that you have there. Stay at middleweight. I don't like that Tafon Nchukwi's jumping up and down. I think you've got to get used to a weight class. He's just spent the last 6 months being a middleweight, training as a middleweight. Now he's going to come in another 10-15 pounds heavier at light heavyweight. He's not going to be the monster he once was on this short of a turnaround between fights. He was a big light heavyweight, a big stocky guy that beat Jamie Pickett, but Jamie Pickett is not that good, and I think Mike Rodriguez is definitely better than him, and I think the range is going to be a huge problem for Tafon Nchukwi. I can see Mike Rodriguez staying at range quite well. He's a little bit like Jamie Pickett, but Jamie Pickett's a little bit more wild. Mike Rodriguez stays in a bit more of a technical stance. He's a good fighter. He lost to Danilo Marquez, but there's no shame in that. He's a big guy, great grappler. The Ed Herman loss is absolute bullshit. He got a finish by knee to the body. Like, let's just be real about that. He's dangerous in the clinch as well, by the way, which is somewhere that Tafon likes to be against taller opponents. Has a good win against Marcin Prachnio by first round KO. Marcin Prachnio now on a 2-fight win streak in the division. Daeun Young is on a streak right now in the division. Not a bad loss to have. I'm actually going to go with Mike Rodriguez fighting for his career here. He's got a massive reach advantage over Tafon Nchukwi, and I think he's going to have a huge advantage out there at range with kicks, with front kicks to the body. I just didn't like what I saw from Tafon Nchukwi at middleweight in his last bout. I think he looked very untechnical, and I think I'm going to trust Mike Rodriguez's size, length, and overall attributes to make up for some of those technical problems he also has. So in a fight where both people aren't too technical, and they're both a little bit disappointing recently, I'm going to go with the guy in a stand-up fight who's got the massive reach advantage, who's got the longer legs by far, and who's got way more experience against better competition. And also, he's not shifting about weight divisions. He knows he's a light heavyweight. He's staying at light heavyweight, bettering himself as a light heavyweight. How is Tafon going to reinvent himself in 5 months into a different weight class? 20 pounds up. I don't get it. So I'm going to go with Mike Rodriguez. I think Tafon's going to be smaller than usual and not pack as big of a punch. Mike Rodriguez gets this one done as an upset. Moving on to the main card. Joaquin Buckley versus Antonio Arroyo. I'm going to be going with Joaquin Buckley here over Antonio Arroyo, but I do that with extreme skepticism because Buckley's not that good and it's worrying to pick him because I know people are picking him here in very high numbers, but Arroyo is not too bad on the feet. And he's a big guy as well. But I'm going to go with Joaquin Buckley, finding his way underneath him, landing big shots over the top. And I think Arroyo just keeps his hands way too low. I can see a punch KO happening here for Joaquin Buckley. His loss to Alessio Di Chirico doesn't look as good, but his win over Jordan Wright looks a little bit better now. And his win over Impa Kasanganay, let's not forget. But he's not going to get out-grappled here. I don't see that happening with Arroyo. Arroyo's grappling game is pretty non-existent. So I'm going to go with Joaquin Buckley being comfortable on the feet like he was against Kevin Holland and landing a big shot over the top of like a low guard or a sloppy like return of a jab that doesn't go back to his chin of Antonio Arroyo and finding a big KO in the first round over Arroyo. Buckley by first round KO. Arroyo's just so technically unsound and is not good in the cardio department either if this does go past the first round. So I'm going to go with Joaquin Buckley getting it done. First round KO, explosivity, reach advantage being a shorter opponent. I think he's going to catch him over the top of a lazy jab. Moving on up the card. Arman Tsarukyan versus Christos Giagos. Arman Tsarukyan. Moving on up the card. No, I'm joking. No, Arman Tsarukyan, if he loses, like I get that there's a chance he could lose, yeah, so I should maybe put some thought into this. But there's genuinely no reason not to pick him. Like, this is just if you want a Hail Mary underdog, because anything can happen in MMA, you pick Christos Giagos, but, like, do you even? Because Christos Giagos is not, like, a prolific finisher in any way. Like, he got a finish in his last bout by Das in the second round, like a decision before that against Carlston Maness. Decision. Like, he's not if he was like a guy with first round KO power, I wouldn't mind maybe a pick of him, but a pick of him. But I'm going to go with Arman Tsarukyan, way more well-rounded. The performance against Makhachev is aging like fine wine. Arman Tsarukyan's great grappling, great stand-up, great everything, great chin, great cardio over 3 rounds. He was really putting on the heat on Davy Ramos in the 3rd round of his last bout. This is just, hey, keep yourself busy, Arman. We can't find a ranked opponent for you right now. Arman's going to get it done. I'll say rear naked choke in the... I'll say submission, rear naked choke, 2nd round, something like that. I think he will land some good shots on the feet. I think he'll equally land like a lot of good takedowns against Giagos once he realizes how easy they are to get on him. So I think I'm going to go with Arman Tsarukyan, either ground and pound or TKO, or maybe like a rear naked choke submission in the 2nd round over Christos Giagos. Rear naked choke, 2nd round after some ground and pound from the back mount from Arman Tsarukyan in the 2nd round of that fight. Moving on up the card, Mandy Bomb versus Ariane Lipski. I'm going to go with Mandy Bomb here. And she's also evens with Ariane Lipski, which is surprising to me because I thought Ariane Lipski would be like an underdog here. So I'm definitely going to take these even odds. Mandy Bomb, 10 to 11 on odds. I'm definitely going to be going with Mandy Bomb here. She's just a bit better. She's very technical. She's very skilled. She's got good stand-up. She's got decent grappling. She's well-rounded. She's 7-0, undefeated, coming up out of Germany. And she's just built differently than Ariane Lipski. She's not like a She's a bit more athletic than Ariane Lipski. She's been signing against some tough opponents as well. Taylor Santos was supposed to be her debut. She's beat some decent opponents on the regional scene. 3-0, I guess. 3-1. It's really hard to tell these things, but from what I'm seeing, she looks very technically good. So I'm probably going to go with a decision win over Ariane Lipski for her. Lipski just seems to have, when it comes to actual women who know how to fight, that seems to be her limit. She can beat some other opponents, get a submission out of nowhere, get maybe a TKO out of nowhere, who knows. But when there's just a fundamentally sound Montana De La Rosa or someone along these lines, she seems to just not be able to keep up with them technically in any way whatsoever. And she's just not really built as much of like a fighter. Mandy Bomb, a little bit bigger than her. I think she's just got a hot streak right now. She's more consistent. 7-0. I'm going to be going with Mandy Bomb here. Plus, if it stays on the feet, she's got a 3-inch reach advantage over Ariane Lipski. A little bit wider at the shoulders. She's just more of a man than Ariane Lipski. And I'm going to pick Mandy Bomb to get this one done against Lipski by unanimous decision. 30-27, I guess I'll say. Moving on up the card. Nicholas Motta versus Cameron Van Camp. I'm going to go with Nicholas Motta here. I don't mind the pick of Cameron Van Camp as a bit of an upset here. But he's just not gonna have a good time, make him weight. And maybe he comes in 5 pounds overweight and I get fucked over here, but I think he's gonna try and make weight. He's not a huge welterweight, but he is 6'1", like he's a tall guy. And he's taking this fight at 155 on short notice. And you know what Nicholas Motta showed really good ones of on the Contender Series? Body shots. He's got some really nice body shots, some really nice combination punches, really good pressure. I think against a short notice guy who's gonna have a real rough weight cut down to a division that he hasn't been to in a while. Body shots, pressure, under the big lights. Motta's got a decent chin as well. He's lost by KO before, but he's got good head movement. I think he takes shots quite well. We saw that against Joseph Lowry, who was 9-1 at the time. I think he's really rounded himself out into a decent fighter here. 28 years of age. They've given him some time since the Contender Series as well, knowing that he's in the UFC now, which I really actually like, because he had his fight against Amir Hadzovic delayed originally. So he's just got more time for himself. He's had about 10 months. Knowing he's in the UFC, to improve and go full force in his MMA career and try and get a win in his debut. And I think he's going to do that against Cameron Van Camp. Cameron Van Camp's pretty decent, though. I wouldn't mind the idea of an upset here. I did look at it a little bit, but just hasn't really beaten too many great opponents. And he's fighting cans, which tells me what your coaches fucking think about you. Nicholas Motta gets this one done. 32-13, Bobby Volker beat him. Other than that, he beat 12-6 Dan Stigen. 10-6 Craig Eckelberg, 5-4 Hawaz Sian. Like, what is this progression of a career? Like, oh, now you've beaten these 3 cans, let's give you 10-7 Kenny Gargiulo. Like, I just don't. That shows me no confidence with his team whatsoever. So I'm definitely going to be going with Nicholas Motta here by TKO in the second round, I'll say. Moving on up the card, Jan Cutelaba versus Devin Clark. I'm going to go with Jan Cutelaba here against Devin Clark. I think he'll get the job done by first round TKO. If he can do what he did to Dustin Jacoby against Devin Clark, which I truly believe he actually can. Devin Clark is not really got a great chin, and Cutelaba's been KO'd in his career before, don't get me wrong, but Devin Clark, he's not a huge light heavyweight. Dustin Jacoby is a very big light heavyweight with great stand-up and decent grappling defense as well. Devin Clark has maybe a little bit better grappling defense and looked good against Alonzo Menifield after taking some big shots early. Looked good in the second and third round of that fight, but Jan Cutelaba showed a great difference in cardio in his last fight against Dustin Jacoby. He had a 10-8 worthy round in the first round, which is a lot of output for a light heavyweight to get a 10-8 round. And in the third round, he looked good as well. Even though he lost the third round, in my opinion, he made the third round close, whereas before in Jan Cutelaba's career, he was completely done in the third round. It was like you weren't even fighting a person anymore. He was literally just a heavy bag looking to survive past the end half of the second round. Whatever he's doing to fix his cardio, it's working. I think I trust that. He's also a very young guy still in his career. I believe he's, 27, 28 years of age. 27. Still! 27! Jesus, Cutelaba's been around for a while. 27 years of age. I'm going to go with him over Devin Clark. Devin Clark's good. Beating some decent opponents. but a little bit older now, 31, has had his damage in his career. He got choked out by Anthony Smith in that fight and just made some really dumb mistakes on the ground. Ryan Spann hurt him really badly and then got a guillotine choke over him. He got dusted up by Alexander Rakic after some early success, though. Jan Blachowicz got a finish against him. Alex Nicholson got a KO win against him as well. I'm going to go over Arn Cutelaba being able to do what he did to Jacoby in the first round, and I don't think Clark's going to survive that onslaught, and I think I can see this going down. Cutelaba ragdolls him a little bit, makes him work, makes him struggle, and then lands some good elbows in a clinch against the cage. As maybe David Clark is getting back to his feet, Cutelaba lands a real rough elbow, couple of knees as well, and then Devin Clark sort of sinks against the cage. And I trust Cutelaba if it does go past the first round. This is a tough one to pick, but I think Cutelaba, watching the onslaught he gave to Jacoby, I don't see Clark being able to defend against that in any way. I'm going to go with Dustin Jacoby. What am I talking about? I'm going to go with Jan Cutelaba, first round, late TKO, as he did to like a Khalil Roundtree. Even though they're very physically impressive, Cutelaba's got this different strength in that first round, and he's got improved cardio, and he's way younger. I'm going to go with Ion Cutelaba here, getting it done. Moving on up the card, Anthony Smith versus Ryan Spann. I'm going to go with Anthony Smith here against Ryan Spann. Tough matchup to pick because Ryan Spann has got that big power, but he just doesn't look very technically sound here and there. And I thought Jimmy Crute had good KO power, which he does, as he showed against Modestas Pekauskas, who took big shots off Khalil Roundtree, and Jimmy Crute put him down. And Jimmy Crute still sort of got out-techniqued by Anthony Smith. Like, Smith, I know I complained about the leg shot because it's, like, a bit weird and random things happen in fights like that, but Smith showed a great jab before that. Great fundamentals, jabbing off the face of Jimmy Crute. He's very, very composed out there. I don't see him going out there and being like a fucking Misha Serkinov, that retard. Just fucking swinging overhands back and forth and being all jittery and nervous around Ryan Spann. Smith's fought John Jones. You know what I mean? Like, it didn't get shocking for him out there. Like, oh my god, it's Ryan Spann. There's not going to be that fault for him right now. And I look back at some of the fights in Ryan Spann's career. Johnny Walker fight, he got a bit messy, got KO'd there. Sam Alvey fight is disgusting. It is a disgusting fight. And he has had some really other good, like some good other wins in his career he has had. Ryan Spann's had some decent wins. But man, that is fucking hideous. Split decision to Sam Alvey. It was not a good fight for him. And it showed that if a veteran guy who's composed out there, who's been around, who's got experience, who does some fundamental things pretty well, can take him to that close of a decision. And it all came down to whether or not you counted that arm triangle standing up as a submission attempt for Ryan Spann. If you don't, Sam Alvey wins that fight. That's just how it works. Like, I'm going to go with Anthony Smith, very technically sound. I think he goes out there, doesn't shoot panically in the first round. I think he goes out there looking to establish a solid jab, maybe a couple of leg kicks as well, soften up Ryan Spann a little bit, and then start to work him in the grappling as the rounds go on. And as we've seen in Ryan Spann's fights, as the rounds go on, he does get a little bit gassy, a little bit tired. He overthrows a lot of his shots. He gets a little bit lumbersome is the word I'm looking for there. I can see the second round coming around. I see a rear naked choke finish for Anthony Smith in the second round. For sure. Spann comes out with heat in the first. Smith lands a couple of good jabs, a couple of good leg kicks. They're both just moving around. Smith's getting the better of the stand-up a little bit in the first round. It's over. Second round comes around. Spann looks to get it back. I've got to get this back for myself. I just lost the first round. I'm going to be a bit more aggressive here. I'm not going to sit at range as much because I'm losing that battle. Spann overthrows one of his right hands, leans over himself as he does. Smith sees the opportunity, ducks under, gets the double leg, gets down Ryan Spann, and I can see him having a real jiu-jitsu advantage over Spann on the ground, and I think he's going to pound him out from the back control. Spann will give up his neck, and it'll be a rear naked choke finish for Anthony Smith by submission. Like and subscribe. Thank you for watching. Click that button up there. Toodle pip. I'll see you later. Goodbye. Thank you for tuning in. That's all. 33 minutes. That is a big card of a whole bunch of nothing at times. Goodbye, though. I'll be there for a fight companion as well if you want to tune in. Smith by submission in round 2. Toodle pip.